Gracias, Eva. Gracias a todas y a
Thank you, Joseba. I would like to thank everyone who is here and all those that are listening to us through their streaming in their offices or in their homes, because there's more than 200 or 300 people that are online, and sometimes we forget about them online in this type of conferences. So thank you all. Thanks everyone that has shared their talks, ideas and discussion with us throughout this day and a half. Because as Eva said, one of the aims of the Basque government is to develop the Basque employment system law, and to do so, and listening to what Joseba Zalakain said before, we've tried to listen, learn from the experience, and try and progress in the design of a public employment system that, and I will comment on one of the conclusions, there's a full consensus of the need of a change. There is a consensus on the need of this law. This is good news, but there's another side to this that I don't know if it's good or bad, or if it's risky, and that there is consensus on how complex it will be. So, the starting point is a consensus. We've listened to those working in the sphere of employment, and to advance in the design of the law in May in the Employment Forum, which we understood was a forum that brought together all the administration organizations and institutional organizations, as well as social agents and those operating in the labor market, executing actions like training, companies, clusters. So we had a whole diversity of agents, and we believe it was diverse enough to be the starting point for the future law.
And it's a starting point, which wasn't so much of a starting point, because we had already spent at least 10 years ago, 10 years, and been doing already an awful lot in the world of employment. In the Basque country, there are many, many experiences in this field. It is true that we were the last autonomous region to have these powers transferred, and until then many initiatives have been taken locally at a city level, and the Basque government, even though it didn't actually have the specific powers over that, had also actually developed a series of programs and a whole series of institutes that then came together and gave rise finally to Lanbide. So we've got a lot of experience in this field. We need to learn from that experience. Everybody agrees that an act needs to be passed, and everybody also agrees about how complex this act is going to be, because there are several elements that are going to help us design a framework. And I am going to contradict some of the things that have been said today regarding the administrative process. I actually think that a law, what it does is it gives you a framework for acting in a specific field, in this case the field of employment. How we pass this law and will lead to some procedures that are either easy to follow or more difficult to follow. Either they're more respectful of a person's independence, or they're more invasive of a person's independence. So an administrative process is necessary, and the law is needed also to organize the whole system. Another kettle of fish is what kind of act we pass, if it's an act that makes procedures even more complicated, or if it actually turns the back on the people's needs, or if it's a law that's aimed at facilitating the sectorial goal, in this case employment, that it is trying to achieve. So we need to realize that acts, and I think in this case we all agree that they are necessary, we need an employment act, but of course we need to be very, very careful to pass an employment act that meets the needs that we want them to meet. And what sort of needs are they? Well, to design this law, and this has been spoken about, there are three goals. One is to find what we all agree upon. And I usually say during the process and in the previous Congress and this one Congress, I think we actually all agree upon the cornerstones and the questions that we need to answer. We need to come closer to the population, the job-seeking population, to business. We should assess results. I think of all of these things in last year's Congress, even though it was a remote Congress, we spoke there about the need to build this employment system. We were already talking about that. And in this Congress, we've also spoken about this. And during this process of contacts with all the different stakeholders that are in the world of employment, what we wanted to do is to see what we've got in common. And there, I think there's something that there are things that we do have a consensus on. So then there are some specificities. Of course, it's a very complex world and very specific worlds with where there are different interests. I don't mean that they counterpose each other. But the world of labour actually creates a market. And of course, city councils have their needs, the public has its needs, social partners, universities, business clusters, trade unions, they all have their way of seeing things. In fact, one of the challenges there is actually to build this common core and incorporate the diverse way of seeing things and make this complex diversity to help us in this process. And finally, another of the goals at this stage is to make a community, a critical mass for a specific shared project. And in this act, that's either we share or it'll give rise to a law, but then that won't be applied. It'll just be a piece of paper with a law written on it. So so it needs to be shared. That's why it's so important to build a community. These kind of events, this Congress is going to help us to do that and create this community. 180 questionnaires, 40 in-depth questionnaires were carried out in different government departments and amongst different stakeholders. And as I was saying earlier, during this process, three major challenges have popped up. The top three. One is related to an improvement in market research. We need to understand, and we've realized that over the last day and a half, that we don't work as part of an employment system. It's not a system. We don't. Our goal isn't to train people, nor is it to give people careers guidance, but to get them to find a job. And to get them to find a job, a vital condition of that is to get to know what the market needs from these people to then adapt via active employment policies to those needs. So this proximity, detecting the needs of the world of production, and we've been saying this for many, many years now, We don't always get it right. So this is a major
Vasco de Empleo que tendremos que
challenge of this Basque Employment System Act. And another thing is innovation. Innovation, this is something that has come up time and time again in interviews and questionnaires. We're not talking about new active policies. I mean, new things can be done, but it's more the performance, the way those policies are put into practice. This cropped up again. I think somebody said to us recently, innovation probably isn't a matter of inventing new active employment policies, but rather we need those that exist to be more focused on our ultimate goal. This is something that comes up time and time again as well. And coordination between stakeholders as well, and complementarity comes up on occasions. And in fact, Deputy First Minister said it in the opening ceremony yesterday. Euskadi is a small country, but it does many things. And I don't know because of the fact that we are very active, or because these powers transferred to us late in the day, but everybody seems to have a say in the world of employment. As was said earlier by Xavier Ramos, all the different departments have an employment side attached to them, from the environment, immigration. Of course, everybody does things. Many stakeholders do things in the world of employment. It seems therefore necessary and urgent to coordinate and to complement. And these are the three challenges, and they're very complex challenges. Very briefly, because otherwise time slips by. Active employment policies have different levels of importance, but they're all actually important. But except for all of them, fail when you assess the general situation. We understand that all of these policies are necessary and important, but if you assess these active employment policies, they all need to be improved upon. Room for improvement. So what are the essential change factors that are needed to make sure that the Basque employment system actually meets new needs? Better performance of the service, as we said earlier. Innovation doesn't so much lie in preparing new tools, but actually in the service's performance. Adaptation to what people need. This has been said over the last 2 days, and this is something actually we've been saying for a long time now. Over 30 years we've been in this field, and different positions, different areas have been saying that. We've been talking about this for a long time. And we need to get things right, because our life depends on it. Added value creation and the integration of services is vital. I'm going to just skip over that now and move straight on. Another thing that we raised in the law, when we spoke about the law, you know that the Basque employment strategy talks about conceiving active employment policy as a subjective right. And it's true that when we ask people about this, I think it's still difficult to perceive and understand how that can actually happen. And it's true, the subjective right and all the different strategies that surround it talk about the need to set up these active employment measures as something that exists. It's difficult to visualize and to understand how what this can become, but it's also true that 64% of people and organizations that have taken part see it at least as an important element that accelerates change. And another interesting element is that when we try to give an example of that and see what this subjective right to active employment policies can become. What happens when when it becomes a lifelong assessment of people's lives to see what their skills are? When you start drilling down, it would seem that people, and in this case around 76% of people, feel that this is something that would be positive for the employment system. So this element is part which during the implementation of the law we're going to have to specify more, it would seem, is considered as something that's interesting and that can accelerate things. Another thing that we asked about in the questionnaire, and that we also something that needs to be included within the law, is our information system. On several occasions, people have spoken about the need for data. People have spoken about a national employment system, and in the Basque Country we don't have a national employment system. We don't know. We know what Lanbide does, but we don't know what the provincial government of one of our three provinces does, or what a city council does. We need to include all this information in one place, because we do lots of things. We expend an awful lot of public money. So we need to know what we're doing with those people so that we can design an employment itinerary and assess whether what we're doing is effective or not. So this element, this information element, we feel is a key part which the law needs to include. And finally, we also asked in our questionnaire about the inclusion in collective bargaining of active employment policies. And this is something that, yes, people feel is far off. I don't know if there are any trade union members or members of employers' organizations here, but greater integration would mean better connection between active employment policies and company needs, business needs. But unfortunately, that's going to take a long time, a lot of effort that today is still very limited. And the major challenge of this law, in addition to everything that's related to innovation in active employment policies and related to the articulation of this subjective right, which is coordination and governance. Coordination and governance to integrate all these stakeholders, all of those people that aren't so much in competing, but something I said yesterday. We've got the Basque government that implements the active employment policies. It's true that the National Employment Institution has some sway over local events, but we think that the system needs to be organized, but none of the organizations or institutions that are taking part in this system is too much. We need to be able to understand what each does better to carry on doing things and to complement each other. So our intention, our challenge, not as a government, but our challenge as a part of the employment system of all of those that have a role to play in the employment system, is to go from this ecosystem where there are many stakeholders doing many things, and some of which are great, and not being recognized because the system isn't structured. See how we can do this transition, make this transition. Is it your remit? Is it many mayors draw up an employment plan because they think that's part of their duty? So we need to talk to these people as well. We need to have all the different stakeholders on board. That's really, really important. Also in this connection with the world of economics and all those different agents that have a role to play in the system, and of course with the world of knowledge, the field of knowledge, and I think we've seen that in this Congress. We need we need to take the activist viewpoint, the political viewpoint, and the viewpoint of those that put into practice these actions, and also those that work in the world of academia, those that can better conceptualize what we're doing, what these active employment policies do. I've now overstepped my time. We have integration, but based on specialization, proactive leadership as well. Everybody in the surveys and interviews say that leadership is necessary. The system needs to be led. The Deputy First Minister in the opening ceremony said that the Labour Department is prepared to lead this because actually it's their job to do so. But a proactive and participatory leadership. And finally, thinking about the fact that active employment policies don't create jobs. They don't create jobs. What we have to do is to perhaps take a broader view of things, and with the business world and the business world that creates jobs, and also with the economic world, this broader way of seeing things from society's viewpoint, that in the sense that jobs are also related to economic promotion and other processes as well, with inclusion processes as well, as has already been said. This more overall view, which has come up during all the speeches. These are the principles, the cornerstones that in the Employment Act we will try to deal with. A law, an act, and yesterday I said that I called to the Deputy First Minister and said, we need all of you on board, we need you all to assist. So thank you for listening to me.
Abrimos turno de preguntas.
It's time for Q&A.
Tarjetas por si acaso quieren.
You've got cards if you want to write your question. We've also got a mic out there. If you want to ask your question out loud, please feel free to do so. Transformation of Lanbide requires new, more human resources. Somebody spoke about this in doubling resources. I didn't say doubling resources, that wasn't me. Lanbide is another leg of the stool. In all the interviews, it appears as the key tool in the system, not just one of them. So, and it's in that conviction that we've started this ambitious process to reform our tool. And in Lanbide, there's a tool to organize and reorganize human resources. However, of course, that needs to be dealt with, that organization needs to be dealt with. It's also related to processes. I think we need to analyze things. I don't know if we need to double them, but probably we will need more people. But before that, we need to know what we're doing and what's key, what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, and what procedures that take a lot of time but that don't add any value. So I think we need to carry out a complex and thorough analysis of the situation. and also broach this situation.
No sé si hay preguntas. Si no,
I don't know if there are any questions. If not, I can ask one. We've only got about 3 or 4 minutes.
para poderlas hacer. Yo creo que ha sido antes,
I think Javier Ramos earlier spoke
si no he apuntado mal, cuando se está hablando de las políticas
when talking about
como derechos subjetivos,
active employment policies with subjective rights,
Alfonso GURPEGUI,
something that mentioned that we need to talk about.
la ley. Creo que ha dicho que era algo así como hacer una ITV.
It was sort of like doing a sort of, maybe we should do a checkup on all our workers.
¿En qué están pensando? Usted ha hablado de un examen.
What are you thinking about? I think the Deputy First Minister spoke about
No es solamente a las personas desempleadas.
an exam for people, not just for the unemployed. I think we're talking about a changing world here. Requirements change, a lifelong job doesn't exist, nor do lifelong skills actually exist. So we need to have some way of assessing our skills and relate them to the requirements of our job or the job that we're aspiring to if we're unemployed. That's what we're thinking about. People spoke about an MOT, I talk about a sifting process. I'm not trying to sift anybody out, but it's like a universal measure in which everybody can access. We're working on some pilot projects, in fact. We're working on some pilot projects in the European framework to look at the feasibility or not of this kind of process, and we're thinking about this kind of thing, some kind of diagnosis, some kind of skills assessment, so that everybody has everybody's the right to that throughout their lives. Any questions? You spoke about co-governance at the end, and you described that as a major challenge. The Deputy First Minister always talks about co-governance. When you put a challenge out there, it's always because there's a need or a problem. What's the current situation? You said that it works in the world of employment at the moment. What are the problems that are there today? Or what are the things that can be improved upon? Well, there's a lot of overlapping, firstly, clear overlapping. This is a malfunctioning. There are different organizations doing similar things, and they're targeting similar people. So that's really important. We need to clarify that. And on occasion, sometimes we leave areas, fields, people that we don't have an effect on. This is something we all know how to do. And much of what we do runs this risk of overlap. And things that are most difficult to do, they're getting left aside. So it really is necessary to organize, to tidy, to avoid overlapping, especially if we're missing out areas where we've got good influence. And as a journalist, when? Can you give me an answer to that question? When?
Siempre preguntamos lo mismo los periodistas.
Journalists always ask the same thing. When? Well, we're meeting our deadlines. At the beginning of this period of office, we promised that we would prepare a draft bill for the Basque income guarantee system. It needs to be more effective, it needs to be lighter. Sometimes we're committed to things that by the end of this year, at the beginning of next year, we'll be sending this draft bill to Parliament. And the other was that this draft bill would be prepared fully by 2022, and by the end of the year, it will also go to Parliament. This process needs to go accompanied by a joint reflection by all stakeholders so that we can get this co-governance to be run properly. So we can't stop. It needs to come to fruition. We need to prepare the draft bill, and during 2022 we've got the deadline there. We've been given a deadline. Thank you, Alfonso GURPEGUI. Thank you for coming to talk to us today.